excited to have you guys here for this event hosted by the Board of Trade and sponsored by the Ottawa Real Estate Board. Thank you very much for sponsoring this event tonight, as well as our friends at the TCC Canada and the Collaboration Centre. Thank you for having us in this. Isn't this a spectacular venue?
Yes.
Like, so fun. So thank you so much for having us here tonight. And of course, hosted by David Coletto and Abacus. So thank you to all of them for making tonight possible. Yes. My name is Soule Ching, and on behalf of the Board of Trade, I want to thank you for what I think will be a great night of connection and conversation and a little bit of old-fashioned political banter, if that's allowed. We're happy to be here in the beautiful downtown Ottawa. Ottawa is built on unceded Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory. The peoples of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. We honor the peoples and the land of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation. We honor all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples, and their valuable past and present contributions to this land. Tonight is really about coming together as business leaders, as entrepreneurs, and engaged citizens, really at a critical moment in our time, both in Ottawa and across the country. As the voice of business in Ottawa, the Board of Trade advocates for policies that help businesses start and scale, that help our city thrive and grow, and that's why for us tonight, this debate really matters, and things that are happening in the next, is it a week now? A week or 10 days? Oh, you got it right down. Are very important to all of us. So that's why I'm very grateful to you for being here. Of course, the federal government plays a big role in creating conditions for growth, from smart fiscal policy that supports high potential sectors to red tape reduction that lets small business focus on what they do best, which is delivering goods and services in the communities that rely on them. Federal decisions affect everything from affordable housing and trade-enabling infrastructure to work mobility, market stability, and cost pressures that families are feeling at the kitchen table. In today's unprecedented geopolitical times, this election is nothing short of a once-in-a-generation opportunity. That's why we're really proud to bring you together tonight with a powerhouse panel of pollsters and pundits, helping us break down sort of what's happening, what's at stake, what it means for businesses in our community. And then after that, we're going to tune in together for a live viewing of the National Leaders Debate in English. So hopefully you are better informed to make a decision, influence your networks to also get involved and make a decision at the advanced polls this weekend or on Election Day on the 28th. So we'd like to take a moment, if we can, and invite you to explore the Board of Trade election platform, which you can find on our website, which calls for modernization of regulations, revitalizing our downtown, empowering our SMEs, driving growth in a way that positions both Ottawa and Canada as a leader in the global stage. And while they never say to talk politics among friends, tonight we're going to make an exception and encourage all of you to have some fun with tonight's panel. And then afterward, David has instructed us that everybody must be quiet during the viewing party. That was the only way he would agree to come here tonight. So we'll see how that goes. So let's have those conversations, make some new connections, enjoy the debate, and remember that we're Canadian, so we do it politely and respectfully, and maybe with a little bit of a pint in hand. So I want to say thank you also to, where's Sharon? Sharon for organizing this in short order. And then following the values of the Board of Trade, which is to bring only local vendors in. So we have Stray Dog. I hope you're enjoying the Stray Dog pints, and as well as Kin Vineyards. Our friends from Kin Vineyards are here, and then this wonderful food from Chef Rick. And so either eat it here or take it home, but it's Easter weekend, so it's one or the other. So before we dive in, it's my pleasure to welcome someone who knows a thing or two about building community and advocating for a stronger Ottawa. Please join me in welcoming Paul Chan, who is the board president of the Ottawa Real Estate Board, and will share a few remarks on behalf of our rep. Paul, over to you.
All right. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us here at Pints Politics. It's a fantastic event to unpack what's shaping up to be one of the most important federal elections in recent memory. I'm Paul Chan, president of the Ottawa Real Estate Board, and I'm proud to be here on behalf of over 4,000 Realtor members as a presenting sponsor of tonight's event. At OREB, we know that housing and housing affordability are front and center in this election. And that's not just because of what it means to buyers, sellers, and renters in our community. It's because ensuring that everyone can find attainable housing is essential to the future of our city and our country. If workers and families can't afford to live where jobs are, if employers can't attract talent, and if young people can't see a path to ownership, Canada loses. But when people find a place to live that meets their needs and fits their budget, when businesses can grow because talent can stay, and when young Canadians can picture a future of stability and ownership, Canada wins. As we rally together to strengthen our great country in the face of an unprecedented threat from south of the border, our message at OREB is simple. Bold measures to build more homes that families can afford can and should be part of our plan to protect Canada. That means real policy action to lower taxes and fees that block new home building, streamline approvals to get shovels in the ground faster, and accelerate innovation to help build Canada smarter and build more. That's why tonight's conversation matters. OREB is proud to be partnering with the Board of Trade to bring together leaders from across politics, business, and advocacy to talk about how we move from promises to progress. Guiding that conversation is someone who knows the public mood better than just about anyone. Please join me in welcoming our moderator for this evening's panel, David Coletto, CEO of Abacus Data. David is one of Canada's leading pollsters and public opinion experts. He's helped governments, businesses, and organizations across the country understand what matters to Canadians and why. David is also no stranger to realtors and has appeared often at our real estate conferences and events across the country, helping us to better understand Canadians' views on housing and the real estate market. Please join me in welcoming David Coletto.
And thank you to the Ottawa Real Estate Board for sponsoring this event. It is so fun to be here. Pollsters, I've been saying it's like a 28-day Grey Cup. It's not a Super Bowl, nothing American anymore. But I'm really excited. I'm going to be a moderator. And I've got a great group of people who are going to come up and we're going to share some insights into what's happened, how we got here, what we should expect for and watch tonight, and where we might end up on April 28th. Before I introduce the panel, just to give you a quick context of like how fast the world changed in the last number of weeks. When Chrystia Freeland resigned as Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, 12% of Canadians believed the Liberals deserved to be re-elected. Okay? A few weeks later, when the Prime Minister announced his resignation, the Conservatives were ahead by 27 points nationally in our polling. And at the time, people were talking about whether the Liberal Party would attain official party status. We were talking about whether the Bloc Québécois would form the official opposition. And in every meeting, in every place I went, I said to people, be prepared, Pierre Poilievre is going to win an election, and that's all but certain to happen. Here we are. And what we know is that's not likely to happen anymore. The Liberals are now leading in most polls, almost all polls. We have a Prime Minister who represents, we're going to run to represent an Ottawa riding. We have another one who wants to be Prime Minister. So Ottawa is likely to have a Prime Minister representing a constituency in this city. And based on my research, I believe, and it's hard to confirm, that the last time that happened, I believe, was John A. Macdonald. So it has been a very long time since the nation's capital had the Prime Minister representing our community. And so that presents an interesting opportunity. So tonight, the goal is for us to have a little fun, to give you some insight into some smart minds representing different political persuasions, and then we're going to watch the debate. And you don't have to be silent, but just kidding. I'm just kidding. So first, I'm going to welcome up my panel. First, Kate Harrison. She's the vice chair of Summa Strategies Canada. She is our conservative. Kate and I have known each other a really long time. We worked together for over a decade. Summa and Abacus are partners and work together very closely. Laura D'Angelo is our Liberal. Worked for Prime Minister Trudeau in the Prime Minister's office and is currently Vice President of National Strategy and Public Affairs at Enterprise Canada, a public affairs and government relations company. And then last but not least, someone I went to university with at Carleton University, George Soule, who is the owner of OnStep and has worked for the New Democrats, worked on Layton's campaign, worked for Jagmeet Singh, was involved in the provincial election recently, and they have all agreed to not simply be partisan hacks, but to maybe expand beyond what you might normally see on Power and Politics. Or they're going to try. It's hard to get them out there. So please welcome everybody on the. There we go. That works. For all of you, let's start with just a quick recap. You know, I always like try to watch the Grey Cup. They're doing the pregame show. How did these two teams get here? We've got 4 or 5 teams, really only 2 that are going to win. Sorry, George. But I'm interested in the NDP story because I think it's a big part of this election. But maybe we'll go down the line. We'll start with you, Laura. Give me a sense of, first of all, are you shocked that your team is in the game, right? We're past halftime, I guess. And what's your best explanation for how we're at this stage in this election and I guess in Canadian politics?
Yeah, I'm very shocked. I think most Liberals are still feeling shell-shocked, but really excited. I mean, it's remarkable. I think the way we got here is not that complicated, frankly, right? Justin Trudeau was incredibly hated, probably the most hated politician in Canada. And when you remove him from the equation, all of a sudden, enabled a lot of people who wanted to vote Liberal, who would normally vote Liberal, to feel empowered to do so again. So that's the first part. The second part is our really crazy neighbor down south. And 2.0 feels very different than 1.0, and there's so many, armchair psychology reasons we could all talk about for why that is, but the biggest is that he is about to devastate the global economy. And if you went to Central Casting and said, I am writing a dystopian movie about the global economy and the downfall, and I need a Canadian Prime Minister, who would you pull? It would be Mark Carney. That is who that person would look like. That's probably how they would sound, right? A little bit boring, a little bit wonky, very calm, excellent CV. And when you put those two things together, all of a sudden you end up in this really unusual situation that everything can flip on its head. And I don't think that that's really a surprise when you lay it out, but in the moment it feels just completely crazy.
So Kate, you were all, I know you're measuring curtains at, at a Rideau Cottage with
the big
with
blue
Pierre
gown.
Poilievre. Yeah. People have said, and I don't agree with this commentary, that the Conservative campaign hasn't been very good, that they're screwing it up, that it malpractice. Sure. What's your sense? And then how does the Conservative kind of get to this point?
Yeah. Elections are about timing and about circumstances. I think 99 times out of 100, we would have had a very different circumstance and probably the one that was being predicted before the Prime Minister resigned. Laura is totally correct that was a massive event that shook up the public opinion landscape. You layer in the tariff war with the United States, and my observation, a media ecosystem that is very focused on that particular event with the United States, and you have a changed public opinion dynamic. One of the things that I think is really interesting, and I'm sure we'll get into it, we'll talk about some of the data, of course, but the movement of older voters to the Liberals, people that have historically voted Conservative, is something that the Conservatives are grappling with, at the same time as trying to now bring all of these people that are showing up for Pierre Poilievre's rallies, people that feel motivated by the Conservative message, a lot of whom are young men who have not historically voted. Conservatives are now relying on this very untraditional, unreliable voter base to show up for them. So part of it is circumstances. I think part of it was perhaps not reading correctly how much of public opinion was being driven by the hatred of Trudeau as opposed to the virtues of conservatism. But I do think that there is a lot to be optimistic about for the Conservatives. Poilievre consistently is polling around 38, 39%. That is better than Stephen Harper. If he can translate that on election day to votes, if he holds the Liberals to a minority government, he has a very compelling case to stay on as leader, because no one in the caucus would be able to do that and pull those kind of numbers. So I think there's something interesting happening here around the Conservative movement in Canada that may be overshadowed by the circumstances and the times that we're in with Trump being a ballot question for a large number of voters, perhaps not the top ballot question, but at least for a constituency that reliably shows up.
George.
Hello.
Hello. 9-10%. That's what the NDP's average poll is right now, which is about half of what it was for much of the last, 10 years.
Sure, but it's a couple up from where it was a couple weeks ago, so I'll take it.
Optimism. Love it. Yeah.
I just want 15, that's it.
We do have a strange dynamic here.
Yeah.
Well, just to extend on what's been said already, I think it's true. Pierre Poilievre continues to run the campaign that got them to where they were in December without any noticeable change, right? And I think it made a lot of sense. Like, they ran on this whole Canada is broken and did a lot. Don't get me wrong, I think Justin Trudeau did a lot of damage to himself, but the Conservatives tore Justin Trudeau down. They tore the government down, and frankly, they spent a few $1 million tearing down the NDP, too, which I bet you they wish they could take back now. And again, that's not something we've seen a whole lot of, but they were beating the Liberals so badly that they decided that they could just spend their attack money on Jagmeet and the NDP. So that shifted things a little bit, and I think exactly that campaign of everything's broken and I'm going to be the guy that's going to fix this torn down place worked fine until all of a sudden across the country we decided that we're all going to be patriotic in a way that I think probably not since we had a prime minister from Ottawa. And that shift in pride meant that the message that Canada's broken was an argument people didn't want to hear, and they didn't want to believe in that. So, and on top of that, I think there were a lot of people that, while they didn't like Justin Trudeau, they were just kind of parking their vote. And I don't want to, I'm sure David knows more about, or I know he knows more about this stuff than I do, but I think there were a lot of people that were just kind of soft conservatives. They were just like, I'm not with Trudeau. I'm a blue liberal. Maybe I'm even a liberal, but I'm not Trudeau, so I guess I'm with Poilievre. And as soon as the patriotism thing shifted, and there was somebody other than Trudeau to get behind, it was just easy way to shift over. And what's happened to our team, and again, I like the Liberals. I'm sure we've done our own share of mistakes, especially since I left. But seriously, I think that on top of that, people are afraid of Trump, and now they're afraid of Poilievre. So people are doing whatever they possibly can to make sure that Trump's not in charge and Poilievre's not in charge, which means a whole bunch of people who, by and large, this is a problem for us anyway. Like I can write the end game or the last 2-week campaign for every Liberal campaign in the history of Liberal campaigns, which is you got to vote for us or the Conservatives are going to come. Like, I know you're a Democrat, but vote for us this time, just this once, and every time after. And that message is really resonating right now because of how scary Poilievre has made himself, which again was effective before but not anymore, and because of how scared people are of Trump. So I think that combination of things has made things really tough. And in case you're not a total nerd, and so the Kate love for the NDP all of a sudden isn't obvious, it's because so many of us have gone to the Liberals, that imbalance means across the country there's going to be splits. And there are a lot of places. Here in Ottawa, it's hard to see, but in Northern Ontario and British Columbia, parts of Southwestern Ontario, there are a lot of places where it's not just a slogan, it's true, only New Democrats can defeat Conservatives. But in a lot of places, those splits still mean that the Liberals pop up over and over and over again, and we both lose.
You want to add something there, Laura?
I wanted to touch on what Kate was talking about with young people, because I think it's actually one of the stories of this campaign that is often getting missed. In 2021, and you're going to correct me on my data here, but in 2021, it was roughly 46% of youth who could vote voted out of 18 to 24-year-olds. In 2015, that was at 57%. That is a massive drop in available voters. But what we're seeing this time is that 18 to 24-year-old bracket is coming out just in droves for Pierre Poilievre. He has captured the anger that they feel and the frustration and the inability to get ahead in their lives. And if the Conservatives can motivate them to vote in a way that Justin Trudeau did in 2015, which is, hugely credited with one of the reasons he got a majority, things all of a sudden look really, really different. But it's also something that's getting missed right now. That is not the main topic of the campaign at this point.
And I think it's a perfect jumping off point to sort of talk about one of the issues that's driving that, right? And that is housing. When you look at the public opinion data, it's most people say this election's about Trump. It is if you're over 45. If you're under 45, it's actually about something else.
Right.
It's largely about, can I afford to buy a home if I want that? Can I afford to stay in the home I currently have? And will my job be there and be able to serve me? And so when you talk, Laura, about that younger cohort actually being open to disruption, right? Like a lot of people frame this election as like stability versus disruption. And Mark Carney represents the stability piece and Pierre Poilievre represents the disruptive piece. And I say disruptive not necessarily in a negative way, because what I think a lot of young people are saying is, no, we want disruption. We want that the status quo is not working.
System change.
System change needs to happen. So on the housing question in particular, I think one of the things that we constantly see this strange generational dynamic. You see it around zoning, you see it around bylaws. Like, how do you bring different stakeholders together, right, in order to actually start to build more homes? Because I think, like, if that doesn't start happening after this election, like, young people you think they're pissed now?
Yeah.
Like, wait a few more years. And that radicalism that I think we're starting to see, and I say that again, not in a left or right in a negative way, but just this radicalization of young people who just think the system's not working. So how do we get there together, I guess?
I'll get started. It's a complicated question and series of issues. Like solving the housing crisis is not something that is going to happen next week or next month. It's going to take a long time. I think the Liberals have tried to get started, and frankly, some of what they had put in place prior to prorogation, like we may see years from now the success of some of what they've put into place. What I would observe in this campaign is a fair bit of commonality in the policy proposals that are coming forward from the two main parties. They're saying the right things in terms of reducing regulation, reducing permitting times. They both have incentives for new home buyers in terms of GST promises. So there seems to be some consensus in terms of some of the policy resolutions in order to get there. I think the big difference between the parties is the role of the federal government in delivery. The Liberals are more inclined to believe that they have a direct role in building, which is why Mark Carney is talking about standing up a new agency that would really, fold in the work that's done by about 5 other agencies right now, but have the government be the builder. That's definitely not what Pierre Poilievre is proposing. He thinks there's too much government. Government has been the reason why more housing hasn't been built. So I think that's the main discrepancy is, okay, what is the role of the federal government in terms of acting as a builder? What the federal government can do in addition to, GST cuts is play a bit more of a convening role and a forcing function, in my view, for other levels of government to clean up their own house, pardon the pun, on regulation and on tax. One of the things that I think, may not be attractive to everyone, but something I think could be effective is incentives and disincentives for not acting on housing. If you're a municipality who thinks that you might not get the funding that you should be getting because you haven't met your housing starts, that may create a little bit of innovation and a desire to change things from the status quo. I know everybody else in this room knows that it's way easier said than done, but at least you are putting a bit of a shock to the system to say, yeah, we're going to reward you for things that are going well, and we're going to hold things back if things aren't going that way.
Yeah, I mean, Kate's right. This whole campaign has been really interesting because you can, barely slip a piece of paper between the policies of the Conservatives and Liberals in a lot of cases. And they certainly,
Agreed.
right? Like, it's wild. And they certainly want a lot of the same things. And on housing's one of the few files where there is actually a lot of daylight there. So, the tax credits that Kate's talking about, there's a pretty important distinction, right? Pierre Poilievre's GST, he's going to remove GST on homes under 1.3 million. That's for all buyers, whereas Mark Carney's is for first-time buyers only. They both want to unlock federal land, which in Ottawa is obviously particularly interesting, but that's happening in two different ways, right? Pierre Poilievre wants to sell it off at a low cost. Mark Carney wants to lease it so that housing costs themselves are going to be lower. And the reality of all of this is, to Kate's earlier point, we actually don't know which one is going to be most effective, and we won't know for a very long time. But it is something, I think we're going to see a lot of it in the debate tonight. I think housing is going to be, housing and Trump are going to be the two hot topics that come up. And what I think is particularly sad in all of the NDP story this time around is, particularly right now at this economic moment in time, having a strong NDP is really important to Canada's social fabric and social programs, because they do hold an important place in keeping a little bit of the check on some of the other parties, right? Keeping those social programs moving, continuing to push for Canadians in a way that I think is a little bit different than the Liberals or the Conservatives do.
Just before, just one thing that I would just touch on with housing. You spoke about this being like a generational issue. That is so important for the voter prospects of the Conservative Party. And one thing that I think, looking back on this campaign, depending on how it goes, that I think we maybe should have pushed harder, was this idea of, frankly, generational warfare. Young people are locked out of opportunity. They were told what they needed to do in order to to have a house, to start a family, all of these things, and they've been sold a raw bill of goods, and it's that's manifesting in a really challenging way for a lot of young people, and perhaps sometimes in an angry way. And I really think that if the boomers are not with the Conservatives, which it appears they won't be, then you don't need to worry about towing the line on zoning restrictions or fourplexes or sixplexes near to transit. There's an opportunity here, I think, to be very direct and deliberate about housing policy designed to appeal to millennials, and maybe a little bit of this has been playing it a bit safe on housing for the Conservatives, who are still trying to hold on to some of that older vote.
Do you want to add, or
Yeah, but
go for it? Go for it.
Well, to finish on this policy, because I appreciate the sponsors tonight, and I would agree that I think that on housing is one of the ones where we probably all kind of fit into what you think of as our categories. The Conservatives think that the private market can do it all on their own, by and large. The Liberals think more government, and we think more government, faster, more money. So literally, as far as the incubator fund goes, the plan that Jagmeet has tabled is instead of $8 billion, it's $16 billion. So literally double. But then we also, in that, don't worry folks, we do understand the market works a little bit. Part of that is also, so rather than kind of the stick, it's an even bigger carrot than the Liberals are offering, right? So if it turn it into like a transfer payment in the same ways that the transfer payments work for health and other social programs, if the provinces and the municipalities take back their restrictions and open it up to make building more easy, then they get the funding, and then the funding comes through to those communities. In the absence of that, then the funding doesn't go. So you need to get rid of those, lots of the restrictions on it. I mean, as far as the government land, right? The Conservatives want to lease it. The Conservatives want to sell it. The Liberals want to lease it. We want to build government-funded housing on it. But off that place, like in the private sector, we understand how that can work, and it is really about the same kind of incubator fund. And again, like the Conservatives like to say it hasn't worked. Well, no kidding. It's been 12 months, right? Like, it takes time. So we want to like supersize that, and again, use that funding to really push the 2 levels of government below the federal government to open up and get rid of some of those restrictions on building.
Okay, turning to the debate. So we're not going to talk about the French debate last night because I think there's been enough commentary about it. We don't have a lot of time left. So we're going to play a little game. I'm going to ask each of you to answer a question not related to the party that you're cheering for. Okay? And so, George, I'm going to start with you. To get back into the game, finish this statement for me. Pierre Poilievre must
change his campaign entirely. But really quickly, I mean, we touched on it before, but I want to be clear. Like Jenny Byrne, who's campaign managing this, and I think she's a very intelligent woman. I mean, I've been listening to her commentary for a long time. She very much criticizes the past Conservative campaigns for chasing votes in the middle, and she thinks that's why they lost, and then they lost people to the right. So her raison d'etre has been, we got to motivate everybody, including the right. And so we're going to go after that 30 to 40%, and they're all going to turn out. And they might. I mean, that might happen. That's her theory. And then a bunch of liberals won't show up. Anyway, but I do think that he needs to soften himself a little bit. I appreciate Jenny's strategy, but I think it's gone too far. I think he needs to open up a little bit more to welcome some of those blue liberals. The problem is, and all kidding aside, Mark Carney, I think, is right of Paul Martin. And is going to pull the Liberal Party well to the right of center. And so I think that's what's really kind of hurt Poilievre. Even if they wanted something different, I think Carney's taking up that territory.
So, Laura, Jagmeet Singh, a little bit of a football analogy. Does he need to throw a Hail Mary tonight, or is he more running the ball?
I mean, I think he better throw. I think he better throw really far. Listen, Jagmeet Singh he's in a really tough spot. It has been very tough for him to break through on any of the major issues right now. And he's having a tough time, sorry, George, seeming credible on most of them. Part of that is because he hasn't necessarily been in those spaces before and hasn't had to talk about it before. But he really has to find a way, frankly, to knock Carney down a couple of pegs. And he's in really tough because as long as progressives and even a little bit left of center voters are afraid of Trump or potentially Pierre Poilievre, but certainly Trump, they are going to continue to vote Liberal. Unless NDP voters think that a Liberal majority is a sure shot, they will likely continue to vote strategically. And so Jagmeet Singh needs to convince Canadians tonight that Carney's in the bag, don't worry about him, instead let us hold us to account. And that is a Hail Mary. I'm not sure that running the ball is gonna work.
I don't know who you watched the French debate last night. Oh, some of us nerds. Okay, unite. Good job. But I don't know if you noticed in the first, I think, 15 minutes of the debate, Jagmeet Singh referenced the monarchy twice, which I thought was clever in Quebec. The Hail Mary I would have thrown is I would have proposed a referendum getting rid of the monarchy, there at that moment in Quebec. And people would have, that would have completely disrupted the whole debate. And anyways, you can have that one and pass it on.
There's still
for
time.
Next time.
You have half an hour.
Yeah.
So just really quickly on this, I actually think, and I appreciate the strategy, but I think it's actually run the ball, and it's because it's the ground game. I appreciate the kind of, and so if folks saw the Ontario election, people said that we weren't going to get party status, and instead we're still the official opposition in Ontario. I actually managed a campaign in Oshawa, so one of those blue-orange campaigns, and I think that's what's got to happen. We got to get hard on the ground and really get those people on the ground in each of those ridings that we have a chance at winning to understand that the message they're hearing at the big level to vote Liberal to keep away Poilievre might be true in the majority of ridings, but in a whole bunch, it's not, right? So up to, some people have up to 97. I would argue it's probably a bit smaller than that, but still, like somewhere in there, if in your riding, if you're scared of Polyev, it might be to vote orange. And so I think that's why it's the ground game. We got to grind it out. The air game just isn't working anymore.
So, Kate, it will be a good night for Mark Carney if.
He goes back to London? No.
Be a good night for you.
Yeah, sorry,
Come
I
on.
misheard the question. Good night for Mark Carney if, frankly, I think if he performs as he did in the French debate, in the English debate, he will be just fine. He comes across, he maybe looked a little miserable last night. Like he could have, Pierre's maybe like smiling a bit too much. Mark Carney could smile a bit more. And I think that might just be a virtue of being so focused on getting the French right that he, can't. It reminds me of like that Kissinger quote, like, don't you like the answers to my question? Or don't you like, or not, I'm going to totally butcher this. But anyway, he was very rehearsed. He was not really, like, he knew what he wanted to say on a certain topic, but he didn't really engage with anybody else. And so it's a good night for him, frankly, if he can continue to deliver those key messages, maybe smile a bit, just show a little bit of warmth, then he'll be just fine.
Can I just say, I don't think I've ever heard more talk about when men need to smile more or less than this campaign ever. It's a really nice change.
And don't get mad at the moderator, right? So there's a little habit that he has in this campaign of getting frustrated with reporter questions, maybe being a little bit, kind of challenging, chippy with them. He does that in the wrong spot tonight. People might take notice.
So what is going to be, if something surprising happens tonight, little prediction, what is it likely going to be tomorrow that we're talking about? I'm throwing you a curveball, you didn't even get this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Jagmeet can punch through, and arguably he did last night, and like I think, if anyone watched or didn't watch, I think everybody did what they had to do. Mark Carney needed to not fall on his face in French or be a jerk. Pierre Poilievre needed to not be himself, aka a jerk, and Jagmeet needed to stand out. So to be clear, I think all three leaders did what they needed to do, and Jagmeet, I think, did that extra little bit. And I think we were talking about this earlier, and my belief is, even if we don't hear it, in a few days you're going to see a little bump up. Now, is it enough for us? Who knows? But I do believe that, well, the journalists and pundits might say that Jagmeet didn't win the debates, that I think people who watch it will feel a little bit better about us. And quickly on housing, I think one of the good moments Jagmeet had last night was he asked Pierre Poilievre, while he was housing minister, how many houses did you build? And Pierre Poilievre said 220,000, and Jagmeet said six. And like all day on the news today, I keep seeing Jagmeet doing this. And to be clear, the answer's somewhere in the middle, because only 6 houses while he was housing minister were built fully government funded. And then Pierre Poilievre's number is every house that all of you built in the entire time he was minister. And then in the middle, there's a bunch that were partially federally funded. So you can argue that, but the 6 is a real number of the only ones that are fully funded. Anyway, that punched through. I was uncomfortable with it, but the arguing with the moderator actually kind of worked for him on healthcare and punched through a little bit and he became a talker. So there were a few key moments that came through that I think, again, that's what we need. What's the surprise? Jagmeet stands out enough that people start looking up and then start realizing that math, and we can get a minority liberal government with balance of power in the NDP.
So maybe I'll ask the question slightly different to you, Kate. What do you want Mark Carney to say in response to something that then throws the campaign off in a different direction?
I think if he continues down this line of, well, I only just got here, like I'm new here, it is going to provide an opportunity for the Conservatives to say, like, sir, you were the Prime Minister's economic advisor for many years. You're running with all the same candidates. I think a strategic choice I would be encouraging Poilievre to make, don't even say Mark Carney's name. Liberal, 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 liberal. Liberal team, liberal government, liberal policies. Carney is polling well above where his party is polling. So do not make it about, Mark Carney, bad man, double bank governor. People don't buy it, right? Like, people are not buying that he's not fit for the job. But they might buy that the Liberals don't deserve a fourth shot. So I would be saying, go heavy on the liberal, and draw contrast on energy, on immigration, on crime. I think especially those latter two, for Ontario voters in particular, really, really key, and in BC and the Lower Mainland. So it's unfortunate in the French debate that all of that happened in the very back half of the debate when nobody is watching anymore, and it was all Trump at the outset. But I think be prepared to draw some contrast if you're the blue team, because there is a lot of it on those topics in particular.
So Laura, just for everybody who's going to hang around and watch the debate, we're going to play some word bingo, and we've got a number of cards that will go around, and we've got some fun prizes for people who win. But I have a question related to words that will likely be on that bingo card. Do you believe Mark Carney will say the word Polyev or Trump more tonight? Which one?
Oh, he's going to say Trump more.
Yeah.
No, absolutely no question. Mark Carney is running against Donald Trump. He is not running against Pierre Poilievre.
Yeah, and so has the fact that the president seems to have at least toned it down a little bit, as much as that is in the last week, made the campaign more complicated for the Liberals, right? Because to me it feels like without Trump, like what are you about? So what are you about without Trump?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Trump being a little bit quieter, if we can call it that, over the last little bit has certainly helped Pierre Poilievre. There's absolutely no question. I will say, and I generally don't like being critical of my own team on stage, but I'm going to. They haven't had, the strict message discipline over the last 6 days that I would have liked to see, right? I think from a really air war strategic perspective, which is the inside baseball term for communications and media, he needed to be talking about Donald Trump and the tariff war and diversifying our economy every single day at every single stop. And they haven't done that the last 6 days. He's pivoted because, the policy calendar or the content calendar told them they had to do healthcare and they had to do safety and they had to do fill in the blank things. And really right now what is driving liberal votes to the ballot box is Donald Trump and defense spending, which is absolutely wild to say for a liberal government, but here we are. And so I think they need to, that is why he will say Trump more than anything else. And I think that is what you are going to see over the last 10 days of the campaign. They've spent a week, the kind of middle quiet part, doing the stuff they felt they had to do. But the last 10 days of the campaign are going to be all about Trump. Including debate prep.
All right, so we're coming close to the end. We're going to take a little bit of a break, but I have one more question, more of a prediction. How do you think this election's going to end? I want to know who wins, majority, minority, does the NDP get official party status or not, and then that's it. I don't need you to predict more than that. So everything. Tell me everything. And I'm the pollster, so you'd be like, you just tell us, David. And I'm like, no, you guys tell us. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, first of all, Mark Carney's going to pause the debate tonight because he has to go back and be prime minister. Those are the best days on the campaign trail, everyone. He's not on the campaign trail. So I will, each of you, one each, whenever you see me around, I'll bet you all individually a beer that we get party status. I'm not going to bet more than that, but I think that I do feel very good about that. Genuinely, I might be wrong, but I think that's very likely. I think it's definitely going to be Liberal government.
Just for everyone to say, party status means
12 seats. That's right. Sorry about that. Yeah, we currently have 25. I think it's going to be a Liberal government. And I can't tell how much it's hope or realism that says it's going to be a minority. I think we'll have to see, but I think Liberal government, party status, and that's it.
Well, we're consultants, so we're not accountable for anything that we say. We're like the meteorologists of politics. Oh, maybe it's this. Maybe it's this other thing. Oops, timing. Yeah, the meteorologists. I think the NDP will get official party status as well. I think right now it would be a Liberal government, probably edging towards a Liberal majority government. I think the movement in recent days provides some optimism for the Conservatives. We were discussing just before this, the number I am watching for the next 10 days is the spread in Ontario. Some polls have it at about 6. Today there's one that has it at 4. I think if the Conservatives and the Liberals are tied in Ontario heading into election day, we have a real fight and a real chance at a Conservative minority government, depending on how things go. They have a very organized ground game, a very motivated, I think it's Paul Wells that says the Conservative voter base is like concrete and the Liberal support is more like sand. So if those unreliable voters become reliable voters and we have a tie in Ontario heading into E-Day, I think there's a shot for the Conservatives at forming a minority government themselves and at least holding the Liberals to a minority.
I also agree. I think the NDP are going to get official party status. I would actually be quite shocked if they didn't, frankly. And now because I'm a Liberal, I'm just going to spew my anxieties all over the stage about what's going to happen. I do think it's going to be a Mark Carney government. I think it will be a slim majority. But if I was here and not being honest with all of you, I would hedge and say, no, probably a little bit of one, a little bit of the other. But my fear really is it comes back to youth, and I cannot discount this. There is something happening that I think everyone over the age of 26 or 27 can just not understand. Youth do not get their media and their news the same way most of us do, although Kate and I are millennial moms, so we get it on Instagram.
Exclusively.
But that's not where youth are getting it, right? 18 to 26-year-olds are getting it on YouTube. They're getting it on TikTok. They are not getting it from journalists that we all know. And there is something that I think is tough to capture in polls, sorry, David, and tough to capture if you are exclusively watching the news that is happening in the Conservative movement right now, that not just anxiety. As a Liberal, I watch and makes me go, we're missing something. There is something there that we're not missing. And so I don't think Kate's crazy when she says a slim Conservative minority.
And just to go off script, but on that point, I think it's also something we should watch for after the election, regardless. I think that all of us need to figure that out. One of the things that happened with Trump and what we're seeing, like, there's just I don't want to be that, I am the old guy on the stage, but I don't want to be that much of that. But there's something going on that we're not communicating with folks, and we need to figure out how to make those connections, or I think we can see some serious problems in the future.
Well,
I don't mean so negative.
Well, I'm going to go with the positive and with thank you very much. First of all, before we formally thank you, I just want to say one thing. Thank you again to the Ottawa Real Estate Board for sponsoring this event. Yes. And I will say, I usually don't put on an advocacy hat because I'm like the objective pollster, but I have been doing research on issues around housing for many years with real estate boards nationally, provincially, locally. And I will just say this, that unless we solve the housing crisis, we're not going to solve all the other things, right? You're not going to build social license again for immigration. You're not going to get people out of the funk that they're in, particularly younger Canadians, unless we make it, make that a home secure in their mind. So keep advocating the way that you are, realtors. It's really important, and for everyone who's not one, and support both the home builders and others who are trying to build more homes. So thank you again for the sponsorship. Thank you to George, Kate, and Laura for being very fun and playing along with me. This has been a real fun treat. Soule, where are you? You are you're right here. Back up to you to close things off. So thanks so much, everybody.